call this meeting to order of the Citizens Budget Review Advisory Committee at 6 p.m. on June the 4th. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance first. Everybody stand. Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Napier.
Present.
Ms. Veet.
Here.
Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Herlihy.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Ms. Ring.
Here.
And Mr. Hall is excused.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the meeting of March the 5th? And if so, I'll accept the motion if there's no.
I'll make that motion with no corrections. Yeah, I know.
That's the first time in 2 years, Bruce. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 5, review of the second quarterly report for fiscal 18. Ken, you're on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, this report is in our standard format, what we normally present every quarter. The purpose is to get it to the City Council for any adjustments that are needed to the budget that have been pointed out after the review of the report. The resolution includes a number of things this quarter. Some reorganization. We merged our audiovisual division into the MIS division, made it one unit. And also, if you recall, we took the engineering division and merged that into the public facilities division. So these things were done actually, I think, in the first quarter, but we reflected the adjustments to the budget after we knew things were settled in those particular accounts. The one change made by the City Council was the purchase of the property at 1215 Indian River Drive that happened during the quarter. That did close. Most of the changes that as we typically do with uses of the R&R, the equipment reserve, we reflect here the amount of use of those funds. So there's a report later on in this document that shows you what the status of the R&R fund is. On the graphic presentations, the general fund, 61% of our budgeted revenues have been received as of the end of March. Now that includes about $328,000 of FEMA money, our first increments that we received of FEMA reimbursements for Hurricane Matthew. The quarter that we're in, to jump ahead a bit, the third quarter, I've added a chart on the second page to reflect the status of our total Hurricane Matthew reimbursements as compared to what we've received to date. So of all the claims that we've made on Hurricane Matthew, that was $1,582,000. We've collected $1,438,000 as of today. Haven't received any reimbursements from Irma. It's in the stage where FEMA is reviewing it. After their review, it goes to the state for a follow-up review. So we may still be way off on that. And there's only about $146,000 remaining on Hurricane Matthew yet to be received. But for the most part, going into the new hurricane season, I'm happy to know that we've got that much of the FEMA reimbursement back in our bank accounts.
Is Matthew when the docks got torn up?
Yes, and a big part of that was reimbursement.
So they did reimburse some of the docks?
Was on the docks, yes. The other information course, is our individual fund summaries, showing you each fund of the city, and it shows the spending of general fund departments. On the spending side, at halfway through the year, we spent 47% of all departments' expenditure budget, so we are apparently under control there. The list of capital projects and the status of those projects, I noticed in my review just before the meeting, we've got a few adjustments to be made for, there again, the two hurricanes. We basically show a budget at this point and on this report of what the expenditures were as of the end of September. We haven't brought it up to date for the expenditures that were subsequent to September 30th. So as a result, those show a negative balance as far as project life to date. Excuse me. As those of you that have worked with our financial reporting for a while understand on capital projects, we continue to have a long list of capital projects, some dating back several years, but we do try to focus on those and get them off the list so that they're not hanging out there. So there's some that we've been particularly have our eye on to try to attempt to close out before this year. I do give you a report on the reserve, on cash reserves. As you know, we use the R&R account. We have a limit of $275,000 that we allocate each year now towards R&R type expenditures, things that we didn't budget for, things broke, needed to be repaired or replaced. We've spent a good part of that $275,000 this year so far. So through the end of March, we only have a balance of $86,000 remaining in the R&R account, primarily because we got hit by a couple of large air conditioner system replacements. So we will be kind of limited on what we can allocate for the remainder of the year out of the R&R. I did do an update on our cash reserves for emergencies, and that's now over the $5 million mark by a few hundred thousand, or by about $93,000 as a result of receiving the reimbursements on Matthew. We give you a report on our cash in the bank, as well as with the State Board of Administration investment accounts. And at this point, you know, we've received all our tax money, so we are in pretty good shape. The balance of the report is our standard report from all the departments on their activities for the quarter. I'd be glad to respond to any questions.
Is there any questions for anyone? Nancy, we'll start down at your end. Is your mic on?
Oh, no.
Please turn it on.
Personnel costs for roads and drainage are over budget. Stormwater is under budget. Last month you said you had taken employees from roads and drainage and transferred them to stormwater, which was going to reflect an overage in stormwater, but I'm seeing the opposite. I'm not sure what's going on there. Why is roads and drainage over budget, and why is stormwater so far under budget on their personnel costs?
Yeah, some of it is accounted for because of vacancies, positions to be filled. But why personnel would be over in the roads and drainage division at this point in the year? I don't really have a good answer for you.
Okay, well, I think you...
I'll need to look into that, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yeah.
And you had answered my other questions, so I will pass it on.
Is that it? Bruce?
Yeah, good evening, Ken. Couple of questions. I think you've answered this one before, but let me go back and ask this again. Why is it on the stormwater utility fund, the revenues, we're at like 91% collected? Yet property taxes, if you look at the collection on property taxes, we're only at 66%. Since they get billed at the same time, how do I not get that the collections don't match up or reasonably similar to each other? You know, I pay the total bill, so I pay the stormwater utility fee with my...
Well, not all the properties on the tax roll pay the stormwater fee though, right? They do? Even the ag?
Well, we don't have that much
No,
agricultural
I believe
property.
vacant properties still pay it, okay.
But I mean, how would we collect 90-some%?
Where are you, oh, you're seeing it
I'm on the, under the general fund.
on the graph page there for general?
He's on the money page.
I'm on the, no, Ken, I'm on the general fund reports. On the fund summaries, there you go. Thank you, Nancy. And we've got under the general fund taxes, 5 million. And that's 66%. And if you go to the next page, the
Okay.
stormwater utility fund,
Okay, under the page that's the general, the heading with the general fund revenues, and the first line is taxes. That includes franchise fees and utility tax?
oh, that has all the stuff
it's-
that's talked about in the first page.
Which
right?
come in
The
on a
electric, the
monthly
franchise
basis, so it distorts.
Are in there, okay.
But you're
So
right.
you don't ever separate out the,
Not on this report.
Not
for
on this,
detail,
but
no.
he has, the general ledger has those separated by individual revenue stream,
yeah,
correct?
I don't know,
Of
I'd
course.
just like to see what we're collecting on property, you know, okay, so maybe we have gotten that much through then. Okay,
They should track each other, you are correct in that assumption.
okay, yeah, they would track that, okay, and I had the same question earlier Nancy had. One other question though, your new graph on the reimbursements, okay?
Yes, sir.
And from FEMA. And I'm looking at the graph, and I'm looking over at your capital projects report, and you can help me out on this. And so far, you're saying through March 31, and maybe this is where I'm getting, is that right, capital projects? Or through March 31, or should, yeah, we're through the second quarter, right?
Yes.
And you come down for 2017 and you say, Hurricane Matthew, we're gonna split that 12.5 out of our general fund and 87.5 from FEMA. If I take 87.5 of the 1.7, and I guess maybe these numbers are in flux all the time, you get like 1,520,000. And you're saying we already billed them for 1,581,000. I'm trying to figure out how we billed them supposedly for 60,000. I mean, that's cool. Let's bill them all we can do, but
Okay,
I thought those numbers should come reasonably close, or...
the numbers on the graph do only represent the FEMA and the state portion, the 87.5 generally. Now, some parts of the reimbursement are based on different than a 75
And the
12.5,
87 and a half, yeah, we have different reimbursement rates.
particularly with
That's
Irma,
just,
With Irma, there was like a 30-day period on a debris pickup that was reimbursed at 100%, so.
okay, so the 87 and a half is just an approximate number of blending it all.
Should pretty much be a minimum, but
Okay. Shows up. Let me ask, under the R&R fund, on 1031, and I missed this, it said, this has got to be the wording. There is a $39,000 expenditure for the police air conditioner replacement permit. We paid $39,000 for a permit?
no. I had seen that just before the meeting too. It should be slash include, it includes.
No, that
the permit.
includes the permit, okay. I was just like looking through that and, because I was astounded at how much we'd already spent, and I thought, this guy, I'm like, what kind of, and then you look back at the air conditioning, okay. Incredible. Okay, one other comment. Florida Trust, 0.38, have we tried? It's not worth it? I mean,
Okay.
I mean, Seacoast is giving us over 2%, you're saying. That doesn't seem to be a real worthwhile return.
Let's see, it was a year and a half ago, I think, that I broke off some of our investments into the Florida Trust.
$500,000, yeah.
Started off with $500,000 I deposited with them, thinking that eventually I would probably even it out and have maybe $3 million or so at SBA, $3 million or so at Florida Trust, and 5 or 6, whatever, in our local bank account. I wanted to diversify, not have all our eggs in one basket. Remember that the investments in Florida Trust are securities. So they have an average maturity of 2 years. So some of their maturities are 1 year, some of them may be 4 years, but they average out to 2 years in government securities. The market has not been kind.
Right, with the raising rates.
But with the philosophy that you invest long-term, you don't start switching out of those funds at a loss, try something else with it, and then before you know it, you've entered the market at the wrong time. And frankly, when I look back at the history of it, at the time we invested the $500,000, was not a favorable time.
Yeah, that was the low point of the interest rate environment.
Yeah. So I'm saying we get a little bit longer. There again, I mean, it's serving the purpose of not having all our eggs in one basket. I would have liked to seen something that was more favorable, that we could, thinking long-term, investing longer term rather than the money market funds, that we would generally get a higher return. So I thought this was going to be just a piece that was perhaps at more risk, but the risk has gone and rewarded us on the downside, not the upside. I'll be talking to the city manager about this.
Well, the money markets aren't paying any more than the...
We do have an investment committee of the city attorney, the city manager, and myself. We just haven't convened since...
Well, the SBA is about comparable with money markets around here, right?
It is. Yes.
And the FMIT. The Florida Trust is, they're pretty comparable. As I noticed altogether, the total combined interest on everything is less than 2%, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else, Bruce?
No, thank you.
Ed?
Well, Bruce, I guess, is tired of beating on the golf course, so I'll beat on it a little bit. Just a little. It really comes down to a question of, and if everybody has probably seen the article in the paper, a series of articles with a headline, Florida municipal golf courses have lost nearly $100 million over the past 5 years. That probably is inflated, knowing newspapers. But if you read through it and you look at the problems that other people are having, we're not quite there yet, but we're working on it. Not only have we got a problem with the golf course itself, as far as use, but that's been discussed in public, we have problems with the restaurant, which is some income to us. And who knows where that's going to go. So the golf course is a problem. And we can sit here and do nothing, which is basically what we've been doing for a number of years. Lord knows this committee has discussed it over and over again. And my friend Mr. Hoffman has led that until I think he's gotten tired of it. But the fact is that sooner or later, and I think it's sooner, we've got to face up to what we're going to do about it, how we're going to finance it going forward, what we're going to do about the losses, and where are we? It just can't keep sweeping it under the rug. And I think one of the things that I would ask the committee members, they may not agree with me, is I'm suggesting that we ought to discuss this when we take our recommendations to City Council. And we say, folks, you've got to decide what you're going to do. You've got to get a plan. Because as far as I know, and I don't know everything by any stretch of the imagination, we don't have a plan. Now, we have a new city manager, and he may have a plan. I certainly hope that he's got one. But this is a problem. So, enough said on that one. And I'll reserve everything else until we have discussion about going forward with the budget.
That it?
That's it.
Michael?
Not at this time.
Andrea?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, I tend to disagree with the golf course. I don't see that the golf course is in that bad a shape, because I reviewed the audit online, and you add back the depreciation expense, and you look at the amount of rent that the city's charging the golf course for the airport, and you look at 15 years of, I won't call it deferred maintenance, it's no maintenance at that golf course, because I play golf out there all the time, and they didn't do anything. So, of course, if you let your irrigation go for 15 years, you're going to have to replace it instead of patch it. Then they let the greens and the fairways go so long, they had to redo those. That's expensive. That stuff doesn't come cheap. It's just like a building here. You must keep doing the maintenance on the buildings. It's much cheaper to do maintenance than it is to wait 10 or 15 years and then have to rebuild it or redo it. So I really don't see that the golf course is in that bad a shape. When you look at the reconciliation of cash on the annual audit that was just completed, and it's I believe the golf course took in as much cash as it actually spent, because it doesn't spend depreciation. That was pretty close. The number was pretty close. And I still think in some of the old documents that I have in a file there, that I think we're overcharging the golf course rent. I think it's overpaying. That old original lease from the FAA, and I know when you change that rent, you have to go to the FAA to get Mother May I permission to modify that, right? Because the original lease in that golf course that was done in 1981 required it to be looked at every 5 years. Once every 5 years, it had to be looked at, and you adjusted it to the CPI index over that 5-year change. That don't lead to the numbers you guys got in your audit for what you intend to charge that golf course for rent.
No, we did amend the lease back about 8 or 9 years ago.
It was in 2000.
Was it 2000?
And you changed a bunch of those. And it went from like $80,000 to $250. When you look at the schedule that has what your projected rents are from the golf course to the general fund, or to the airport, it's pretty big numbers.
It was quite a spread. We're currently like at 106,000.
Right, right. But did the FAA sign off on that change when it was changed from the way they had it with the CPI index? It looks like we're just using arbitrary numbers in there. I couldn't tell where their numbers came from when I tried to look at the percentage of increases in there. And I can get with you on that later. There's no sense taking up more time here. But I don't think the golf course is in that bad a shape, really. I think the golf course is coming around now that it's fixed out there. The restaurant is a problem. But that's a self-made problem, I think. We made that ourselves. We might have jumped too quick when we did that. I think we should have worked with the tenant that we had there for 27 years and tried to work something out. That's my opinion. And we wouldn't be in the boat we are with that restaurant now. That's the reason we did away with the restaurant and contracted it out, because we were losing $2,000 or $3,000 a month. You can't make money in the restaurant. It just never seemed to work. So I'll leave that go, and I'll talk to you about some of those airport rents. We could do that later. And that's all I have. But honestly, I don't think the golf course I don't think it's as bad as it looks. General comments by the members. Anything else you want to say, Ken, on that?
Not as far as the quarterly report. No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
General comments by the members, and we'll start down at this end. Andrea, we'll start with you first.
None tonight, thank you.
Okay. Michael?
Neither do I. I have nothing for this evening.
Ed?
Ken, usually at this meeting, we discuss the preliminary assessed valuation. And you had a number, and there was a number in the paper. Do you want to?
I was going to mention that under my comments.
Okay.
Just briefly, I mean, at this stage, there's not a lot to report, but I will make some comments as far as the budget status.
We had the highest increase in the county. It was about 8.26%, wasn't it?
Not, well, depending on what you're comparing to. If you're comparing to the ending values, it was close to.
Well, they always take the original one. They don't take the ending.
Well,
And they'll change it again when he puts the numbers out in July. It will probably go up a little more.
generally it does.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you want me to elaborate on where we are on the budget prep now, or do you?
Well, you can do that under your comments.
Okay.
Anything else, Ed?
Well, as far as the upcoming budget is concerned, just discuss, excuse me, philosophically, we've got a number of things to look at, and one of them is what effect the vote this fall is going to be as far as what it's going to cost us. We've discussed this before, as far as why do I forget the vote on
The additional homestead exemption.
the homestead exemption.
The extra 50 grand.
So you had a number before, and you want to reevaluate that and come back to us with that. But somewhere, there is a number, somewhere from 0 to wherever, it's going to cost us, as far as lost revenue, if you will, next year. So philosophically, if we decide that we're going to leave, if one option is to leave the tax rate exactly the same, with the rise in the assessed valuation, we're going to raise more money. And do we take some of that, or whatever is necessary, against that happenstance for next year? We talked about it last year, and City Council decided they didn't want to do it. They're just going to take their lumps. Well, how long do we expect this wonderful growth thing that we've got going is going to last? It's interesting to note, anybody who lives in Sebastian can see all of the building that's going on. Houses popping up everywhere. It's almost like 04, 05, and 06. And the building department is pretty busy. So philosophically, where does the budget go? I'm just throwing these ideas out. Do we leave the tax rate the same and take the money and put it in roads, which we've talked about, and we've done that before? Do we do that again? Do we put it in stormwater? I'm just throwing out ideas, which I'm sure that Mr. Carlisle has plenty of them, but just for food for thought. Enough said.
That it? Okay. Bruce? Any general comments?
I would say, I disagree with you. I think we ought to just I think we should stop trying to play games with the golf course and call it an enterprise fund and just put it in the general fund because we're gonna fund it. And stop trying to think that it works itself and pays for itself. It doesn't.
Well, the general fund doesn't fund it, it's loaned money, right? But it gets it paid back.
It's loan money, but, you know, that's right pocket, left pocket. We ought to just admit that it's never gonna carry itself and just put it in the general.
Yeah, but it gets paid back
Put it in the general fund and schedule out under the capital improvements and.
You're discounting the amount of money that the golf course puts back into the general fund too.
Well,
And if it were a part of the general fund, it wouldn't do that.
But I don't see any money going back in.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, and you can look at the reserve, and it's negative, big time.
Did you transfer a charge for general services out of the golf course into the general fund?
Approximately 90,000.
Yeah, I thought it was around 100 grand for the year was what was in the budget. So you look at those little things like that, and you add those three things up together, and if it were in the general fund, though, Bruce, it wouldn't be paying a subsidy.
Larry, but it'll never make enough money to pay for its capital improvements. It can't do that. It just won't do it. Show me the track record over the last 5 years. It has no track record.
Well, you're looking at the track record, too, through a Great Recession, when everything was down and people weren't playing golf.
No, not 5 years ago. The recession was 2008, 2009.
2007 is when it started. It really hit here in 2008.
We're already in 2018. Go back
That's
5
10 years
years.
ago.
That's 13, 14. People were playing, and it's not making money.
Well, if you review the rounds, you look at the rounds played, the rounds are really coming back up. And the revenue's up now. The revenue's up, is it not, Ken?
This past year was fairly good.
Yeah.
Larry, the numbers right here, it's losing. I mean, you look at it. Through 3/31, we're negative 73,000.
Yeah, but
And
what you need to do, Bruce, is review that annual audit that they got put online out there and look at the cash reconciliations of those various funds and read those pages in the audit report. And I don't see any comments from the auditor.
But all we're doing is borrowing money. You're using borrowed money to cover capital improvements, even deficits.
The city borrows money all the time.
We should just admit, it's not an enterprise that's ever gonna cover itself.
Been an enterprise fund since 1982.
Admit what it is. It's a social project for certain members of the community. And put it in a general fund and just schedule it out. And schedule out capital improvements as we need them. Instead of borrowing money and just, it's all paperwork.
Well, the money gets paid back from wherever it's borrowed from. It's just like paying back a bank. You make payments till you get it paid back.
Larry, we had to, if I recall, we were supposed to pay back the building department fund, and we got to the point, was it last year or the year before? We couldn't afford, the golf course couldn't afford to pay that back, just paid a little bit. We cut down how much it paid back, correct?
No,
It struggles to make
no,
those.
we scheduled out the amortization of the loan from the building department, and we did budget that amount.
And those things are right on target, are they not? I mean, I just reviewed that audit report.
Well, we're paying
Right.
I mean, only half the loan was taken out prior to the beginning of year before last. So it wasn't debt service on the full $700,000. It was $356,000 that we had by year end as being borrowed. So we charged the golf course the appropriate interest and repayment of the principal and a 15-year amortization, I believe.
I think it is, and it's paying the general fund over a shorter time, right? Because didn't it borrow some money from the general fund as well?
There's no debt shown
To the general fund?
general fund from the golf course.
So that was all paid back?
Well, I'm not saying that there haven't been expenditures covered by the general fund, but it wasn't logged in as a debt to be repaid.
Okay.
You know, DST actually
Nice
helped.
discussion. Nancy?
Yes, I don't want to be in the middle of this argument here, but I do want to mention that if you look at the renewal and replacement account, which is general fund money,
Right.
a good deal of that has gone to the golf course over the past couple of years, and none of that's being paid back.
It should
That's
be.
general fund money that's going to the golf course. So I just wanted to put in that comment, and I have nothing else.
If it's not, it should be. If it uses general fund money at any time, it should be paid back. It should be set up as a due to, due from, and it should be paid back. That's what enterprise funds are. It should be paying it back. But that's, I mean, that's policy for the city council to determine if they don't mind the
Yeah,
general
Larry, I'm
fund.
not saying that we kill the golf course or sell it. I'm just saying we ought to admit what the heck it is. It's governmental socialism at its best.
You play golf? If you paid those rates out there, you wouldn't say that. And I don't have any more.
I think it is quite obvious just from this conversation. Somewhere in here, there is a problem. The golf course is a problem. You know, we can go around and beat on this forever, but if we can at least agree that we've got a problem, then let's deal with it. Let's not sweep it under the rug and hope it's going to get better. And probably the third quarter is going to look pretty bad because May was just pretty much a total washout. So the number of plays are going to be down, number of rounds are going to be down. So at some point, somewhere, we've got to admit this problem, and we need to do it sooner rather than later. And Lord knows, some of us have been talking about this for a long time. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll announce the next meeting date, which is scheduled for Monday, July 2. I believe that's on the original schedule for that, isn't it, Ken?
Yes, it is the original schedule.
So there's no change on that.
No change.
Okay. So we have two meetings, the 2nd and the 9th of July, and then one on the 30th. Okay. Next meeting date's the 2nd, that's okay. Anybody have any problem with that? Any conflicts? Seeing none, that's the date we go with. Report from staff, Ken.
And that July 2nd meeting will be the point in our annual routine that I make a presentation. I'll through you with my PowerPoint on describing what's in the recommended budget by the staff. There was, as y'all read, some of you read in the paper, there was an increase in our ad valorem taxes. The preliminary numbers were $1,250,000,000, which is I call it 7.3% increase.
Well, you take it to the actual ending, the adjusted ending after Nolte does the evaluation.
I compare our DR.
So you take a bigger number because the property appraiser is going back to the original number they gave you last year.
Well, actually, my number is based on the certified value they gave me last year.
Yeah, at the end of the process, not the beginning.
And the final values were knocked down from that certified value last year, so I've got a lesser percentage increase than what they're reporting in the papers. But anyway, it's all, before we start feeling good about that percentage increase, we've got to look at how much of that was additions to the tax roll versus how much is reassessments, because the reassessments portion factors into the rollback. Well, I should say it the other way, the additions do not factor into the rollback rate.
Right.
So,
Well, he doesn't have that number ready yet, does he? That won't be ready till July, right?
usually the first,
Right.
they're usually pretty good the first day of July,
Right.
maybe a day before. So we are working hard on the budget. We've had meetings with most of the departments. Paul Carlisle, our new city manager, has sat in on all those sessions with us. We're making progress on getting it balanced as far as the general fund goes. Haven't really paid a lot of attention yet to the golf course, to be honest. But, you know, Paul's been a lot of help already. He's got some good ideas we'll be trying to handle in the new budget, particularly with the way we present some of the funds. Stormwater in particular, we're going to break that out to show, attempt to show one, the special revenue fund, and have it incorporate all the expenses and revenues on our presentation, as opposed to we were transferring monies from stormwater to general fund to offset the costs that were recorded in the general fund. So an excellent idea that Paul had was to go ahead and set up the personnel cost, everything we can show as a stormwater expense being paid for out of stormwater fees. So, but anyway, it's too early to really give you much of a synopsis on what we've got in mind. We're still balancing out the numbers and deciding where the what direction we should be recommending.
We'll be busy in July.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well,
Can I
on behalf
ask,
of the committee, Mr.
can I ask
Carlisle,
one
we'd like to welcome you aboard the city. Yeah, Ed, go ahead.
can I ask one question? Do we have any idea how the budget will be impacted by the law passed by the legislature for school security purposes? Do we have to hire, or is the city going to be responsible for hiring additional resource officers?
We have provided one resource officer in the past. We're required to add 2, so we'll have a total of 3 resource officers. Conversations have been had with the school board as far as them paying 50%, and basically the same deal as they give to the sheriff with his personnel that are assigned to school resource officers. So yeah, there will be some revenue coming back for those additionally assigned SROs or school resource officers.
Thank you.
As far as stormwater is concerned, do we assume that the idea of adding a whole team, I think, was what Joe Griffin was talking about when we increased the stormwater fees? Are we going to go with that kind of?
We are evaluating whether we can do that or not.
Okay, all right.
And part of the emphasis was to be on capital projects, so we're trying to balance the what we perceive as the intent.
Have you got a preliminary report from the engineers on what the total cost of all the stormwater drainage stuff we need to do?
We have the stormwater master plan.
Yeah, but how old's that thing?
But we, I think, have kind of determined that that's not probably valid numbers for this point in time.
Year and a half.
Would you like Paul? to
Paul's
make-
got some public works experience. He can jump in there and get that going.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to address this. We're looking at a wholesale relook at this whole stormwater master plan and what's been done. There were projects on there and talking with staff that may need to be reevaluated. There's projects that I want to look at and see how we want to move forward with those. I don't want to start just haphazardly throwing people and money at projects. I don't think it's beneficial to the city or a good outcome for our residents if we don't go at this with a systematic plan that makes sense. If we start hopscotching around, we'll never complete anything. So we're gonna work with staff. I've set some time to go with Tim Walker, our stormwater director, and with Philip, and then to look, we're gonna spend an entire day or maybe 2 days driving around the city showing me issues. During this rainstorm, I rode around with Tim on some of these projects and looked at them. We've already reevaluated one project, which is the one that's been hanging out there that everybody wants to get done. It was Stonecrop. I'll give you that one for an example. They had priced to pipe that. Well, I don't think that's the best use because now you lose stormwater capacity. You lose some water quality issues. So I asked our engineer to reevaluate that using either revetment wrap, cable block, or fiber form so that we can keep that channel open because it provides storage, it reduces the velocity running out of that canal into the other canals, which then creates another downstream impact. So we have to look at the upstream impacts of piping and the upstream impacts of the projects that we do. So we are looking at that, and I am going to use that experience that I've had over several years of being in public works to try to help our whole team and our engineers to try to come up with some ways to make this work. I hope that's helpful.
Sounds like a plan.
The meeting for tomorrow is still on, 12 o'clock?
Which one?
The one that's on the flyer in the back. There's scheduled public.
That's for you're talking about the public comment for the CRA?
Yeah.
That's for the motel site. There's a public hearing for the motel site.
Oh, I thought that was gonna be also on the stormwater thing.
No.
On the projects, no?
I don't think so. My understanding was it's for the CRA. It's a stakeholders meeting for the CRA.
Is that what it says?
Yeah, this is all of the CRA master plan. It's not
Okay.
for the stormwater master plan. And I think there's like 7 of those, 5 of them anyway. Different meetings allow the stakeholders of the CRA to comment what they want to see, the master plan of the CRA.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Did we forget anything, Ken? We need to talk about anything else? I think we've got it all covered. This meeting stands adjourned.